Morning. Going to look at a story from Luke this morning, the story of a woman, who was healed, but we're going to look at a slightly different perspective of this story. We often focus on the woman and what she did and how she approached Jesus. But today I want to look at something Jesus said right at the very end. And I'm going to read from Luke chapter 8 and starting at verse 42. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." I like this story. We could look for a long time at the significance of the hem and the tassels and the symbolism, but that's not for today. At the very last moment, after Jesus has healed her, he says, "Go in peace." I hadn't noticed that before, focusing on other aspects of the story. Go in peace. I haven't done what you might call an exhaustive search of the Gospels and of all the healings, but I'm not sure that Jesus says that to anybody else who has just been healed. He says it quite a lot after the resurrection. He says it to the lady who anointed his feet. But I'm not sure he says it to anybody else that's just been healed. So why does he say it to this woman? What is it about her situation that he needs to say, "Go in peace"? We know what peace is, don't we? Do we? If I went round the room and said, "So what's peace?" I wonder how you would define it. I'm not going to do that, but I wonder how you would define it. So often we define it in the negative. It's the absence of wars and conflicts and trials and tribulations and so on. We define it in the negative. But the word peace, whether it is in the Greek or in the Hebrew, has so much more than our word peace conveys. The Hebrew, of course, is shalom. We could do a Bible study for the next hour on shalom, and I don't propose to do that. But in brief, shalom means completeness, wholeness, safety. It encompasses body and mind, soundness, security, well-being, harmony, to prosper. I'm not sure that means financially. Freedom. So if we say shalom to somebody, what we're really saying is something like, "May you be whole and full of well-being." So when Jesus says to this woman, "Go in peace," go be whole and full of well-being. So what is it about the woman and her situation that needed those words? Because she would have understood the depth of the meaning of this word. We could dwell on the embarrassment of her predicament, her illness, the fact that she's unclean, the fact that she's socially isolated, banned from the temple, banned from worship, cut off from family and friends. Even her family, if they're still with her after all these years, cannot eat the food that she cooks for them. They may have abandoned her. She has no significance, no self-worth, no security. Not to mention being fearful of just being out in the crowd in case she touches somebody and they discover that she's unclean. Not to mention being anxious about touching Jesus and approaching him. And what is he going to say? And is she going to be healed? This is a woman at complete rock bottom. Nowhere else to go. She's fallen as far as she possibly can. And Jesus is not only her last hope, he is her only hope. We know if you read another gospel, that she has suffered at the hands of doctors. Mark tells us that. Luke doesn't. Luke, of course, is a doctor. He's defending his profession. She's spent all she had. And she's got worse, not better. Another phrase would be to say that this is a woman at the end of her tether. She has no tether left. I wonder if anything of her situation resonates with you. The details may be different, the circumstances may be different, but I guess we all at some point in our lives know something of the trauma, the desperation, the isolation, and everything else that goes with it. And when you're in that place and somebody says to you, peace, it's not always very helpful, is it? But here's the hope. The woman was healed of her sickness, and Jesus says, go in peace. Not only has she been physically healed, she will no longer be unclean. She's no longer socially outcast. She's no longer kept from worship. She can meet and touch family and friends. Her despair has gone. Her dignity is restored. Absolutely, totally redeemed and set free. And Jesus says to her, go in shalom. Go in that wholeness and well-being and safety and comfort and security, in harmony. Go and prosper. That's total transformation. That's not something we can do for ourselves. That's not peace that we can kind of manufacture. Another meaning of the word shalom is that it's the type of wholeness that encourages you to give back, to generously repay. And so there's the challenge for the woman. She has received wholeness. She has been restored. And there's an invitation to her to let that wholeness and healing spill out to affect others around her. That, I suspect, is the true meaning of being a peacemaker. Letting the peace that is within affect those around you. Because it's despite circumstances. My own experience last year, when I felt that the Lord was calling me out of my last role. Calling out, but not at that moment calling to. And I knew that there was going to be space, a gap. I thought 2 months. It was a bit longer than that. That is so totally alien to me, to not have my next thing lined up before I give notice on this thing, to not know what was going to happen, to not know where I was going to go. And people saying to me, have you applied for anything yet? No. Are you going to? I don't know. Peace in the midst of the circumstances, despite the circumstances. So the challenge for us, I think, today is that this peace doesn't depend on the absence of conflict, on the absence of grief, on the absence of trials and tribulations and sorrows. It depends on the presence of God within us. That is the peace beyond understanding. And whatever life is throwing at you for the last 6 months, yesterday, today, tomorrow, those are the words of Jesus to you too. Go in peace. Not because of us, but because of him. All because of him. So we're going to have an opportunity to bless one another by singing to each other, not just to ourselves, but singing to each other, peace to you. Bless you now in the name of the Lord. Peace to you. So let's stand and look each other in the eye as we sing with the wholeness of this word, shalom.